Adding a table to your drill press can add a ton of functionality. My main focus with this build is to add an adjustable fence with stop blocks and to add dust collection. This project is pretty straightforward, but there's a couple crucial areas. I'm starting with the base, and that consists of the bottom and the two inner side pieces. All future parts will reference off of this piece. Next up are the two outer side pieces. I have the blade pretty high here, but that's just so I have less material to clean up on the bandsaw. There's a few things going on these pieces. This is where the fence will attach to, and also what allows the fence to move forward and back. To allow that to happen, I drill a start and stop hole for the slot that I'll cut on the router table. I lower the piece so that the bit enters into the first hole and I connect the dots. Then I align these pieces with the inner side pieces on the base so that I can accurately drill a hole for the T-nut. This T-nut will accept the locking knob, and for that you can easily buy a star knob and that'll work just fine, but I opted to make a simple one. Using a 2.5-inch hole saw makes quick work of this, and after a bit of sanding and countersinking the holes, I could glue in a bolt. I'm using thick CA glue from Starbond. They have a few different thicknesses and a couple different colors to match your projects. Using a little activator spray makes it set instantly. Check out the link and the coupon code below and you can get 10% off. I want to add T-track to the fence so that I can use stop blocks for better repeatability. I cut a groove in the fence, taking several passes on the table saw. Then I put the fence in place and lined up the T-track with one side so that I can mark the length. I started cutting this with a hacksaw and remembered that it's made out of aluminum, and you can cut that with woodworking tools. I have to clear out a section on these tabs on the outer side pieces so that I have access to the ends of the T-track. I don't have appropriate length screws for this, so I'm using ones that are a little bit longer and cutting off the excess with a Dremel. The last thing for this fence is to screw it in through these tabs. The center mesh area really sets this drill press apart and aids a ton with dust collection. I started cutting this with a Dremel, but that wasn't really working, so I upgraded. I'm using expanded stainless steel with the biggest holes that I can find. Stainless is not really necessary, but it helps prevent rust and it's magnetic, which comes in handy later on. Next, I cut a rabbet into two pieces that will help support the mesh and the plywood tops. I mark out where the mesh makes contact so that I can add a screw in those locations. The rabbet holds the plywood top pieces on either end. These pieces get screwed into the outer side pieces and through the back of the fence. After securing the inner pieces through the bottom, I can now fine adjust all the screws so that the mesh sits flush with the top of the plywood. After getting both sides flush, there was a bit of rocking in the panel, so I heated it up in the middle and jumped on it. It worked great. I have to remove this section of the fence so that it can clear the mesh and slide forward. Relocating the fence so that it sits on top of the top plywood pieces rather than behind them would solve this issue, and I fixed that in the plans. If you're interested in those, they're linked down in the description. To close off the front and the back, I cut two pieces that are the exact same height as the adjustable screws for the mesh. Then I drilled holes in the areas where the mesh makes contact with these pieces so that I can glue in some neodymium magnets. I put two screws in through the bottom and a screw going diagonally through either side. I could have taken off the side pieces, but this worked just fine. The The center of the mesh has a little bit of flex to it, which will likely affect drilling quality and safety. Adding supports not only helps that, but also allows a place to add a zero clearance insert. To do that, I need to cut rabbets on these pieces, which are the thickness of the insert minus the thickness of the mesh. Those pieces get screwed in through the bottom, and now I can mark where I need to cut the opening in the mesh. I used a flap disc to clean all the outer edges and a file to clean up the inner ones. You're likely to touch these when replacing the insert, so I don't want any surprise cuts in the future. To help direct all the sawdust and chips towards the dust hose, I glued in some baffles. This is just 1/8 inch plywood, and I'm using hot glue which fills in all the gaps and eliminates any air leaks. I'm not planning to use these drawers too often. They'll probably hold some extra zero clearance inserts and some commonly used bits. So gluing them together with CA glue is plenty strong enough. I don't want any hardware or holes on the front of this drawer, so I screwed in a small piece on the back to act as a stop, and I could push the drawer open from the area around it. Next, I drilled a hole for the dust port, but I recommend putting this off towards one side so that the drill press post doesn't interfere. I used an angle adapter which helps, but it's not exactly perfect. I added paste wax in all the areas that rubbed so that I can adjust the fence a little more easily. I wanted a way to easily install and remove this table, so I added toggle clamps to the bottom. This holds it really secure, but it's really quick to remove it if I'm drilling anything messy like metal with a whole bunch of cutting oil. That way I can keep the tabletop clean. I want to take a second and let you guys know that I just launched a Patreon. Patreon is a great way to support a variety of different makers, and you get something special in return. I have a couple different tiers with a few different rewards starting at just $1 a month. All the funds coming in from Patreon go directly into camera equipment and software subscriptions to make these videos better. If you like what I do, consider checking out the link down below. Let's get back to the build. Something I want to make sure of is to keep the drawers clean from sawdust, and that's why I made them so that they can adjust with the top and the fence. When I started this build, I wasn't sure how well the dust collection would work, but I'm very happy with how it collects the chips. The small chips fall right through, and the large ones that would normally fall off, like this one, get caught in the mesh. Once I'm done with drilling, I can just push everything through and the table is nice and clean. I'm really happy with how this drill press table turned out, and if you want to build one, there's plans linked down in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.